All right, welcome to ACTO's continuing series of forum calls. We have a special call today. I just want to tell you a little bit about who we are, for those of you who are not currently members or want to know. ACTO is a community of peers, and we're coach trainers and leaders in the coaching industry, and at the leading edge of training excellence and innovation. We welcome all coach training schools, accredited or on their journey, and coach trainers who are committed to the quality and development of coach education and training. And we are excited to present this series for you this year in both. We have a series in Spanish and in English. Our guest today has already graced us with a call in Spanish. He's one of those talented people who can present in both languages. So let me tell you a little bit about our presenter today. So our presenter is Mirna Perez, and she's a PCC accredited through the International Coach Federation. She also has an MBA. She's a certified leadership coach, speaker, and writer, facilitator, trainer, and leadership consultant. As a speaker, her topics include ethics, which she'll be speaking about today, coaching, leadership, diversity, inclusion, and resilience. She's also an author. She's an author of a book, I'm going to try and say it in Spanish, El arte de ser coach y algo más, which roughly translated is the art of being a coach and more. So she's taught coaching as an effective tool for human development and ethics in the coaching profession as part of the Human and Organizational Development Master Program in Mexico City at the Universidad de Londres. Again, apologize for my Spanish. Mirna is very active with the ICF, has been in service in many different capacities. She's a current mentor for the Latin America Ethics Committee. Previously was the Latin America Ethics Representative and chair of the regulatory. She's also past president of ICF Mexico. So I've had the pleasure of speaking with Mirna a couple times, and she's passionate about ethics and how it impacts the profession and the practice of coaching, even to the point of the core competency. So I'm excited to listen and learn from Mirna today. And with no further ado, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Hallie. And thank you everyone for being on this call. It's a pleasure. I'm here to share some knowledge I have, but basically the main purpose why I'm making this presentation and sharing it with you is because, as Hallie said, I'm very passionate about ethics. I am a firm believer that if we are and behave ethically, we can make great impact in the world, especially as coaches. And it also enhances the coaching credibility. So I think this presentation has to do with us, who we are as coaches, as human beings, from an ethical perspective. I'm here to answer any questions. I hope you're all hearing me well. Can I know if you're listening to me well so I can continue?
Sounds good.
Perfect, thank you. And so I'm going to start. The way I'm going to be making this presentation is I'm going to first share knowledge that you probably have already because you're mostly trainers, but just to give an overview about ethics. And from there, I'm going to go into ICF, the ICF Code of Ethics, the changes, information that it might be useful to you as trainers, and to include into when you're doing your training on ethics. It's something I want you to keep in mind all through this presentation. And to me, this is what is relevant, is as trainers, you have different roles. You have different hats that you have to abide by. First of all, you have to have the knowledge about ethics. That's the expertise, the knowledge. But in addition to that, and this is what is very at heart with me, is who you are as a coach, who you are as a person from an ethical perspective. How do you walk the talk? And then furthermore, the big responsibility as trainers and as coaches is how do we transmit this to others? How do we transmit this to our students so they can grasp not only what's in paper, what's the code, but how can they live according to what it's mentioned in the code? And therefore, they can bring that into their interactions and the responsibility they are assuming when they become a coach in their interactions with their clients. So it's quite broad. And if we can see it from that perspective, we can see the value of behaving and taking ethics into consideration, not only as a theory or as an abstract topic, but something that goes beyond. Oops. The objective, like I mentioned here, is just to have a conversation. I would like, at some moment that we can all kind of engage in the conversation and talk more about it, maybe come with ideas and things like that, that we can bring into our interactions to really make it alive to be ethically. What does
Good morning.
ethics mean? Good morning.
It's Glennis. I've just logged on.
Good morning. Welcome. Okay, we're talking about ethics and how important ethics is with regards to the trainers and as a coach and how it impacts our daily life. So you're welcome to ask any questions. And the request was by Hallie to mute in order for everybody to hear. But with regards to these questions, if anybody wants to talk or share anything, who is the most ethical person you know? Why did you think of this person? What are the characteristics associated with this person? I think these are questions that we sometimes don't have in mind. And if we have them, then it creates an impact. Because I have been trying to think as to who is the most ethical person that I know. And so far, I don't have an answer. I can have samples of when I see someone behaving ethically, but nobody comes to mind. I don't know if somebody wants to share something about this.
I'd be happy to, Myrna. This is Sam McGill in Seattle.
Hi, Sam.
Hello. Well, the most ethical person I know is Michael Carroll, who is a coach educator, coach supervisor, absolute expert on ethics. And the way he engages in ethical conversations is always very moving to me. And as you've already suggested, it's very much out of who he is and his knowing of himself, and then applying that into a very, very sophisticated dialogue about complex situations that involve a lot of ethical choices.
Thank you very much, Sam. I agree with you. It's who the person is, and that's what we bring into an interaction with our coachees, and that's who we bring in our interactions with every person we are in contact with. So thank you so very much for sharing this information and for participating. Okay.
Myrna,
Yes.
I also want to add to that, if I could, very quickly. I do know somebody extremely ethical, and it's Terry Belf, who is my trainer. And there is an authenticity there that is a person who speaks what she believes. You can always be assured that what she says is for the highest good of coaching and coaching.
Well, congratulations, Terry. And yes, I agree. And it has to do with authenticity, exactly who you are. And also bringing the best, looking not only at what's the benefit to me on the ethical decision making, what's the best for all the people involved, understanding the context of what might be considered a difficult situation or a complex situation. Thank you.
This is Diane Foster, and I would say the most ethical person that I know is Dr. Rick Hansen, neuroscientist, Dharma teacher, and my mentor. I think that I would add the quality of transparency. I think that goes along with authenticity, but I don't think you can be ethical without being 100% authentic. And that means making sure that your speech is authentic and every action, every behavior follows a list of values that are 100% ethical in terms of being trustworthy and trust producing.
Thank you very much, Diane. So as everybody can be listening to the people, what they're sharing is who is the person, the authenticity, the transparency. And if you see something that you can bring in mind is the trust, in whom you can trust because the person, you know how the person will be. It gives you peace. It allows you to grasp because, like you mentioned, it's a mentor, it's someone that is teaching you through the way the person is. If you were to assess yourself, how ethical will you think your behavior is? Okay. The issue here and why I brought this is because many decisions regarding ethics, it's sometimes it's a gray area. Sometimes, you know, it's not good or evil. Something to keep in mind is not to pass judgment. I will be talking more about that. But the thing is, when we talk about ethics, sometimes the question here is, are you ethical all the time? Are you aware of ethics all the time in your daily life, in everything that you're doing? And, you know, because we are always running around, that's the way we live nowadays, in a rush. Sometimes we might not take this concept so much into consideration, but it's my invitation to keep them as part of you on a daily basis, because I think it will enrich everyone's life. And why it's important to know about ethics? Well, first of all, I love ethics. I think ethics can make a real impact in the world. And it's why ethics now is because there's many things going on in the world. Ethics, when I was teaching the course on ethics, the students always brought the concepts that it's a very philosophical concept, difficult to grasp, and very difficult to bring it into a practical way of the reality of a daily basis. It's important to understand that when we talk about ethics in coaching, we're talking about the practical, the code, and things like that. But also ethics applies to situations like this, to the global climate, to women entering the workforce. What impact does it have? What is required of them? How are they going to be dealing with themselves as a role model? And for example, as you can see here, the technology is growing so fast, it brings changes constantly. What are ethical issues related to that? For example, for us, the iCloud, how are we going to keep our clients' records and everything confidential if we don't even know what the iCloud is? I mean, things like that, that we probably don't think about them, but if we are aware of them, then we are expanding our horizons as to how we might be seeing specific situation from a different perspective, and it creates more awareness from us that we can bring to our students and to the people we interact with. And if you were to define what is ethics, how would you define it? I'm just gonna, like I mentioned in the beginning, I'm gonna give some basic information that you probably know a lot about it. It's just to create the foundation upon which we can continue talking about. Ask 100 people, what is ethics? And you will get 100 answers. Because everybody might have their own interpretation. And that's why what we're trying to do here is to create a platform upon which we can speak the same language and understand the same language so we can put it into practice. Instead of going into a philosophical issues as to what's right, what's wrong, what's moral, what are your values, then we can define, okay, according to the ICF, as coaches, how do we want to behave? What is ethical? What is important to us? What is our credibility? What we want to convey. So it's going from the general to the particular in order to be able to address the ethics concept. The thing also why it's difficult sometimes to define what's ethical and what's not is because there's the relativity of ethics. It could be a situational specific issue. It could also take into consideration cultural ways of seeing because of the culture of a different country. It could be the professional ethics because that's what we're going to be addressing here. Or it could be just a point of view of my values are different to your values, or the priority of my values differ from your values, and I'm seeing ethics from that perspective. Or because the rules say it has to be this way, then we have to understand that it's complex, it's fast. So the idea is, how do we make it to a point that we can focus on what we can really work on? And right now what we're going to be focusing is on the professional ethics, specifically ICF. Ethics is the study of morality and human action. It comes from the Greek term ethikos, meaning character. And I have a simple definition here, a practical. An ethical behavior reflects a system of values that emerge from a coherent vision of life based on equity, justice, the needs and rights of others as their own, a sense of obligation to others and society, and the legitimate needs and standards of society. That's why I think ethics, and that's my main core that really resonates with me, is how through being ethical and as coaches, we can really have an impact in the society. We're going to be focusing, like I said earlier, on deontology. That's the word when it has to do with professions. And it's also called the theory of duty. What are we supposed to do? Normative ethics. And why do we have that? Because it's a guideline. It's a way of knowing how we are all going to behave. What is the foundation upon which we are going to distinguish ourselves as a profession? Otherwise, we might have the best intentions, but one person might interpret it one way and another one in another way. And what we want to bring with all of this is clarity and uniformity. Ethical concepts that I like to share. Consciousness. For someone to be authentic, like Terry said, the person who mentioned Terry as someone authentic, and Diane transparency, is because these people probably have worked a lot on themselves. It's creating awareness, consciousness. Sometimes on conversations with people I have had, they use this word like in synonym, although I don't like to use the word I'm going to share now, but it's just to create a concept as to the maturity of a person, or that person's mature. It's because the person has worked and has raised their level of consciousness, and they live in relation to others and to nature in the world as a whole, instead of just seeing their own needs. It's expanding the way of seeing life as we being part of something bigger, and from there, how do we behave in relation to others that will create a difference, because then that's where the concepts of respect, of ethics, and how I behave on behalf of others comes into play. Self-awareness, how we perceive ourselves from an ethical perspective and how others might be perceiving us. We might think we're very, very ethical, but like I said, in what circumstances? We say do not steal as a value. Let's not steal. But when people go and make photocopies in the office, maybe they think that if they make one photocopy, that's nothing to worry about, maybe 5, 10. What about if they make 100 photocopies every week? How would you interpret that? So it's different issues that we have to take into consideration. Like I mentioned, this is the distinctions. The more distinctions you have about ethics, the more you will be able to have a framework, a sense as to what to do or what not to do. Because it's not black and white. If it was black and white, it would be very easy. This is the Atacama Desert in Chile. This is a photo that I took. I love it because that's when I realized that I didn't know that the earth had so many colors. And then I said, that to me is the definition of distinctions, being able to see all the different colors and name them and see them and be in contact with them, because it broadens my view. Discernment is what I like to see, is how we can start, like the little plant, how we can start with a conversation and make it grow. Make it grow to create more awareness, understanding about ethics. And from that perspective, the justice, impartiality is the blind. You have the eyes blindfolded, and the reason for that is to be fair, not to pass judgment. And the reason to me this is important is because people not necessarily want to be unethical. Sometimes they don't even know they're not being ethical. And therefore, let's not pass judgment. Let's try to understand. Let's try to ask questions. Let's try to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person. And from there, we can address the issues. So to me, that's important. That's a part of the relationship. And communication is taking the courage of knowing when to talk and when to keep silent. Especially on ethical issues, is how you address them. But sometimes, and here specifically, what I want to bring especially to the trainers is how do you have the courage to address ethical issues with your students to create awareness? How do you provide to your students the voice for them to be able to address ethical issues and be able to deal with them in a way that they can feel comfortable? That if an ethical issue arises in their coaching engagement with a client, they're able to address them instead of ignoring them. Because through that, they will be able, you're going to be empowering your students to be able to understand ethics, address issues, and expand the way they're dealing with situations in their coaching interactions. And like someone mentioned also earlier when they were sharing the comments, is the coherence, is walking the talk. If I believe I'm ethical, how am I going to keep tab that I am being ethical as much as possible? How am I going to be coherent in what I'm saying with the way I'm behaving? Not only as a coach, but as a human being. And I think this is the way people feel when they feel that there's an ethical issue or a dilemma or something, and they feel trapped and they don't know how to deal with it. And then, okay, what do I do? Well, let's see what we can do. It's understanding how can you explore a situation. It requires sensitivity to the issues and knowing how to make a decision, considering that it's not an easy road. If it was easy, it would be easy. We would not even be talking or having this conversation now. For this, try to have at least a framework, something that you can share that people who are learning can say, okay, this is what I can do until I integrate within myself how I can deal with ethical situations. And it's recognized if there's a possible ethical situation. Is it or is it not? And we're going to be seeing how ethics, how the ICF deals with it. Investigate the facts. Let's not assume that we know the whole story. There are different sides. Let's try to grasp as much information as possible. Investigate. Learn to see, evaluate what different ways of addressing the situation you can approach here. How can you deal with it? Remember, without passing judgments, trying to understand what's the reality, and then make a decision and address the situation. And once you make the decision as to how you're going to address the situation, learn from it. Because part of all of this is a continuous learning in order to reinforce that being ethical is something that, because you're doing it and you're practicing, it becomes something that you can grasp and that you can put into practice in the future. They say, or I've read recently, when you know how to do something, then you can repeat it because you got good results. When you don't get good results, you don't know what to do because you don't know if it's going to work or not. So if you see that you're dealing with an ethical situation in a way that is creating a positive result and the person is creating awareness and the person can learn from it, then continue doing and continue practicing until it comes very normal as part of you. Then you're really living ethically and you are communicating and you are empowering others and you're sharing that with others coming from yourself, from your soul. These are some ideas to consider. I don't know what you think about this. Would you do it if your children or your parents were watching? Or you do it when people are not seeing and then you think you can get away with it? If you were the person that you're passing judgment or talking about, how would you feel if it was shown in the newspaper? Will it change the perspective? Will you address the issue from a different way? Also, if everybody does it, would you do it too? Or are you going to live by your own ways, your own values that you want to live, and the way you want to direct your life, and the way you want to be perceived by others? Any questions so far here? No? We'll continue then. Because now we're going to go into ICF. That's why I was asking if there were any questions. And mostly, this will be sharing information. As probably most of you know, the Code of Ethics was revised by the Board of Directors in June 2015. Terry, who is here on the call, and some of us were collaborating on the translation, or on the revising of the code, which was quite, I love the people I work with. I love the quality of the people. And that's why I like doing things with the ICF, because it enriches and gives me the opportunity of meeting wonderful people with whom I really feel that we haven't met in person, but it creates a bond that goes beyond anything that I can express in words. As Hallie was saying in the beginning, for those who were not on the call, beginning this year, it will be required 3 hours of continuing education on ethics in order to renew your ICF credential. Something that changed in the Code of Ethics is that it was changed to a positive approach that has to do a lot with Terry. And that's important because it's positive, and it also is changing it to the present tense. It's giving clarity as to what we really have to behave or do, and instead of saying what we don't have to do. It makes it clearer. I'm going to start now, unless there's any questions, on the code itself, because I was told that you are interested in knowing specifically the changes in the code. And I'm going to be quite a little bit precise on the changes, so you have an idea where the changes are and what to look for, or at least to keep it in mind. The preamble on the ICF revised code used to exist, but it now, okay, let me explain something before I start. What you're going to be seeing in green is that it's new. What you're seeing in orange is that it has been modified. So the preamble, even though there was a preamble before, now is quite broad. It has a lot more information, and it also includes the, yes?
It's okay, somebody else just joined. It's
Okay. Before, it used to read, ICF professional coaches aspire to conduct themselves in a manner that reflect positively upon the coaching profession, are respectful of different approaches to coaching, and recognize that they are also bound by applicable laws and regulations. As you can see now, the preamble has gone broader. I'm not going to read everything because you can read it, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
And by the way, may I say something here? This is Tina Elliott, Myrna.
Hi, Tina. How are you?
Hi. Since we're talking about the introduction, I just want to let everybody know that Myrna had a really big hand in creating the introduction, the new introduction.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you for reminding me about that. Yes, now there's an introduction.
You're welcome.
If you go to the ICF webpage, it's what is the Code of Ethics Overview. Yeah, that's the one, isn't it? And yes, Tina, Sandy, and I, we did work on that one quite a lot, and it was lots of fun. Thank you, Tina. And thank you for being on the call.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So the preamble has changed extensively, and I think it's important to know about that. When we go to the part of definitions, here were some changes that basically there weren't that many. It's the ICF. An ICF coach agrees to practice the ICF core competencies and pledges accountability to the ICF Code of Ethics. Basically, what the change here is that before it used to read ICF professional coach, and professional was taken away. And there was a lot of conversations about why taking professional out, because it also caused confusion with the credential of PCC, professional certified coach. So it was agreed that this way it was a lot clearer. And on the professional coaching relationship, it reads now an agreement including contracts. Before, it used to read business agreement or contract. So the word business was just taken away to make it broader, but to be more clear that it has to, that an agreement including contracts are there. I think I have to move the photo here. Oops. I'm trying to see because what I'm seeing in my screen is not complete. Give me a second. Okay. With regards to, it's not highlighted, but the client, because I reviewed it again. Now, before it used to read only the client, and now it reads also coachee, okay? This is important for the programs is that on the roles in the coaching engagement, it's been added. This is new, student, and conflict of interest. The student is someone enrolled in a coach training program or working with a coaching supervisor or coach mentor in order to learn the coaching process or enhance and develop their coaching skills. That's very important for you because you're a coach trainer, so you know that it has been included in the ICF. And as definition and conflict of interest, a situation in which a coach has a private or personal interest sufficient to appear to influence the objective of his or her official duties as a coach. Okay, so those two definitions have been added, so you have that as a reference.
Myrna, I have
Yes?
a question actually. If a student is taking two questions, if a student is taking a coach training program that is not an ACTP, ACSTH, or CCE, something already pre-approved by ICF, do they come under the Code of Ethics?
Remember that the Code of Ethics covers members of ICF
Okay.
or programs that belong to the ICF.
Okay, so students who are in any coach training program that as long as they're a member of ICF, you're covered by the ethics?
No, what is covered by the ethics, to my understanding, has to do the training programs that have been approved by the ICF and ICF members.
Okay.
Because aside from that, there's so many programs for the people. It's a question that always comes up is what happens with all these other programs in which people are not part of ICF. ICF cannot take any action because they don't even have knowledge of those people.
Okay. And being enrolled in ICF now, I've just learned, is someone who is taking who is enrolled in a program that's at least 60 hours. So it's not a 10-hour course, and then they can join ICF. They have to be enrolled in at least a 60-hour program to be a member.
That's being considered, yes.
Excuse me, Myrna and Terry, this is Sam. And I wonder, Terry, if you could explain what you mean by is a person covered by the Code of Ethics? I'm not quite understanding that.
I'm sorry, Sam. What I was intending to say is the person is bound by the ICF, is responsible for living according to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for asking, Sam, because I understood, but thank you for clarifying. It's always good. Thank you. More new things. And wait, yeah, I have in different pages here. The part 2 says professional conduct at large, I as a coach. Before it used to say I will, now it changes I, and it's present. I will conduct, I will commit, I will communicate. I conduct, I commit, I communicate. All the sections from 1 to 4, they're all new. Conduct myself in accordance with the ICF Code of Ethics in all interactions, including coach training, coach mentoring, and coach supervisory activities. Commit to take appropriate action with the coach trainer or coach mentor. And I will contact ICF to address any ethics violations or possible breach as soon as I become aware. So this is the part of empowering yourself, is you are going to address issues. You're not just going to pretend they're not there. As soon as you know something, you're going to want to investigate what proceeds, if something proceeds. Communicate and create awareness in others, including organizations, employees, sponsors, coaches, and others who might need to be informed of the responsibilities established by this code. By communicating about the code, we're making that code alive. We're not just putting it in a drawer. We're making others aware that this code exists and that the ICF is the entity that is concerned about making sure that we as coaches, ICF members, and programs that are validated by ICF, they have these responsibilities of abiding by the ICF Code of Ethics, and that the ICF will take appropriate action or will address different issues or concerns or questions. And something that I will share now is that they keep on working on ethics, and an ethics line has been activators. So we are working constantly on this. And why do we work on this? Because we believe it's important, because we really believe this is at the core of the coaching profession, along with the competencies. The number 4 has to do with discrimination. And I'm going through the whole, I decided to do it like this because I thought it was easier for you to see if you had the code in front of you, to see where was the new things, where were the changes, instead of just making reference to them. I thought I would get lost, so that's why I'm doing it this way. Regarding to the same topic, what has been changed, make verbal and written statements that are true and accurate about what I offer as a coach, the coaching profession, or ICF. Okay.
Sam, did you want to put anything in about what you just put in the chat bar? Sam just put a comment in the chat bar. I'm just giving him space if he wants to put a comment in.
Thanks, Hallie. Thanks very much. You know, as I've read this before and looked at it kind of carefully, I really appreciate your deeper examination of it, Myrna. What I'm wondering about, of course, a code is a set of rules, deontology by its very nature. And what I wonder, the kind of ethics that you've been describing, Myrna, seem to me to be very sophisticated in the sense that it takes a dialogue and reflection in order to truly understand the ethics of any given situation. And I don't see a striving for that in the code, but I could be missing it.
Okay, thank you. Well, like I mentioned earlier, because this has to do mostly also with coach trainers, the way I address ethics has to do like from a broader perspective. And then when we come to the ontology, the code of ethics itself, sometimes it doesn't grasp as much because, like I mentioned earlier, ethics can be seen even from a philosophical. It can also be from a moral perspective. It could be seen from my values or how do I interact in life, how I go through life. And when we're talking about the code of ethics in the ICF, it had to be as clear as possible for all coaches and the coach training programs to be able to grasp in a way that will be as clear and simple as possible. And I'll explain in particular, one of the things that was taken into consideration has to do because we're global. And by being global, we have to make sure that different cultures and countries can really understand that and make it as simple as possible. Otherwise, it would be too complex. Did that answer your question?
It frames it up for me, and in a sense, with no criticism for ICF, it talks about the limitations of a document. Things have to be spelled out in a document, and as you say, in language that's very clear, relatively concise in a complex thing like ethics, and the global nature. Then I think I'm most excited about hearing your thoughts on really putting the spirit of ethics into practice as a professional community, which I know that's beyond this conversation, and it's a little extension from a code of ethics to a way of being.
Thank you, Sam. That's my invitation, and that's why I think it's our responsibility, and for trainers and mentors and supervisors to raise the level about talking this thing. That's where the spirit comes in. That's where the spirit is, that by us being able to have these conversations, we can see how important it is, the benefits, and then we take ownership of it, and then we don't even need a paper because we're living, we're the entities promoting that, and that's what I would like to see it. It's not just a paper, it's how we are as a profession, how we are as human beings, that by being who we are, we're bringing something to the world that will benefit each other.
I join you completely in that.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the next page, and I recognize this is This one, I as a coach recognize that the code of ethics applies to my relationship with coaching clients, coaches, students, mentees, and supervisors. That's where it expands, and that's what's new. So that's important to keep in mind, especially for coach trainers, okay? Something that was modified was number 11. And here, as you can see, what was added was including electronic files and communications. Because with technology and everything, we have to be adapting ourselves to what's in the world. And as I mentioned earlier, technology is going so fast. I myself sometimes cannot catch up with it. But it's important for us to maintain the confidentiality that we talk about with our clients and everything, how we dispose of the records and information that we have. Number 13, conflict of interest, seek to be conscious. That one, I remember we spent a lot of time on that because we seek to be conscious, because if we're not conscious, how are we going to do something about it? And so that was quite complex to be able to put into words the meaning we wanted to convey. Then clarity roles for internal coaches, that's new. To set boundaries, review with stakeholders, conflict of interest. This has to do with coaches that work in organizations and that they have a double role. Number 16, and now I'm talking all from memory. I'm not even looking at my notes anymore. Number 16 was modified. Honor an equitable coach-client relationship, regardless of the form of compensation. This is what would have been considered before bartering. We try to put it in a way that it's just, regardless whether it's someone that is paying or not paying, we're going to honor the coaching engagement in the same way as if we were being paid. Oops. Give me a second. It's just because I'm seeing all of you, I lose some of what's written here. Section 3, professional conduct with clients. Used to be, this is now number 13, used to be number 13. This one, ethically speak what I know to be true to clients, prospective clients or sponsors about the potential value of the coaching process or of me as a coach. This has to do with transparency, like was mentioned before, not overselling, not saying I am going to make someone change in 3 days, things like that. You know, I'm exaggerating, but you know, because it's important to provide that clarity and to be not to oversell. And that part, that relates to the agreement with the clients, okay? Number 19 was modified, have a clear coaching service agreement with my clients and sponsor before beginning the coaching relationship. Before beginning the coaching relationship, and honor this agreement. And this one says agreement shall include the roles, responsibilities, and rights of all parties involved. Is to have that clarity, so there's transparency there also with regards to what we are offering. Number 20 was modified.
Myrna, can I interrupt with a question?
Sure.
What is the reason for excluding the word written from number 19?
Because it was mentioned that sometimes people don't have them written per se, but there's a verbal agreement. And it had to do, that one in particular, if my memory doesn't fail me, it had to do because of some comments about cultural, in which sometimes in different cultures, not always written was done.
Okay, because to me, what it calls for being required in that agreement, it's impossible to address all of that unless it is written. And I have a lot of people say, no, we don't have to have a written agreement. And I really wonder about the ethics of that.
Okay.
Of not putting it in writing.
Okay, but that the idea here is to, I mean, in my opinion, if it's in writing, there's transparency. If there's anything, a complaint or something in the future, the agreement is there in writing. But the reason, as my memory, if my memory doesn't fail me, had to do with that. It had to do because there were comments that in some cultures, the written wasn't always done, and it was to keep it global.
Thank you.
It's a good example of relativity in ethics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and the one also, the number 20, it has to do with the same thing also. That govern interactions, physical or otherwise, because before, I'm trying to see how I used to read before. It was not as broad, and I was the one that brought that up when we were talking about this. Oh, here. Before, I used to read, I will be responsible for setting clear, appropriate, and culturally sensitive boundaries that govern any physical contact. So the idea here was to make it more broad, because, for example, whole responsibility for being aware of and setting clear, appropriate, and cultural sensitive boundaries that govern interactions, physical or otherwise, had to do because, for example, in some Latin American countries, okay, we people become physical because we touch each other, because we kiss each other when we see each other in the morning. And so it was in a way of addressing cultural sensitivities as to in what other cultures that will not be allowed. But in other cultures, just that's something that is the way of interacting. I'm trying to. Professional conduct with clients. This was also modified. Avoid, I'm trying to see this, avoid any sexual or romantic relationship with current clients or sponsors or students, mentees or supervisees. Further, I will be alert to the possibility of any potential sexual intimacy among the parties, including my support staff and or assistants, and will take the appropriate action to address the issue or cancel the engagement in order to provide a safe environment overall. So it not only addresses myself as in relation to my clients as, or sponsors or students or whatever, it also addresses my staff. I'm responsible for them to make sure that this is not happening. Okay. Number 26. This one was modified a little bit. I have a clear agreement with acting as a coach, mentor, coach, and supervisor, or trainee with both client, sponsor, student, mentee, or supervisee about the conditions upon which confidentiality may not be maintained. And this has to do with situations as to illegal activity or situations in which we have to inform. So this is important to have there. Okay? And it's important for them to understand that we, in some cases, we might have to be obligated to share information because of the legal circumstances. But, you know, so that it doesn't come as a surprise if something like this happened, okay? And this is a new section that has to do with continuing development that now is being required 3 CCUs beginning this year in order to renew your ICF credentials. Any questions regarding the Code of Ethics or anything that I have shared with you so far? Okay, well, you know, you can also reach out to me if you have any questions or you want to continue the dialogue. I'm more than happy to continue the conversation.
Hi, Minria. It's Sam again. You know, that last one, I think, was it not 16, the screen you just had up a moment ago?
That one?
Yeah, 28. Commit to the need for continued and ongoing professional development. I had not seen that when I read it before. And I think that's a tremendous leverage places for coach educators and coach supervisors. I'm a coach supervisor and teach that both in the US and in France, to really grab a hold and say, hey, wait a minute, ethics requires continued development, and part of the ethical component of that involves learning how to reflect on your work and your relationships. So I love seeing that. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for participating and for your wonderful contribution. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. The ICF Pledge of Ethics remained the same. There was no change there. This is information that you can find in ICF webpage. It's the Code of Ethics, the Code of Ethics Review, which is what was made new, which is like an introduction. The Ethical Conduct Review Process, the Program Complaint, the Independent Review Board, and the reason, and also I'm trying to take this out of the way. Chapter leader ethical guidelines. It's important to know that the chapter leader ethical guidelines are there also. And ethics frequent questions. Why do I share this with you is to show and validate that there's so many things from the ICF regarding ethics that sometimes we are not even aware that exist, and that we can use as resources with our students, with the people and everything, and to enhance and broaden the scope about ethics. This information is in there, it's very valuable, and we can make use of it.
You have a question, Mirna, about how the ICF is planning on tracking the three ethical guidelines credits. Or is there going to be a new category? Like currently there's core competencies, resource development. Is there going to be a new category?
Okay. You know, there's in order to renew, you have to have 40 CCUs, of which 24 are core competencies. Out of that 24, 3 have to be on ethics.
Okay.
This information, you probably have seen it before, but I'd like to share it. This is a complaint, the process, how ICF does the complaint, receives an ICF, you know, whether it applies to the Code of Ethics, doesn't apply. All the process it goes through with the IRB, with the great people who are handling this information, who I have had the privilege of, I don't work in there, but I have had the privilege of knowing some of the people who participate there. And they are really, my respect to these people, professional, serious, competent, dedicated people who take this very seriously because they know it's for the best of the profession. My congratulations to everybody who forms part of the IRB. You see? And this is the assist line. In addition to all this information that I was sharing that is in the ICF webpage, now they have created an ethics assist line in which people that have any questions, concerns, and things like that, they can address those in that webpage, in that email address, or call, and someone will provide assistance.
We have time for one more question if somebody's got one. Burning question.
If no one else does, I'll throw this out. When the ICF put out the revised Code of Ethics, they did it to all members at the same time. So the revision was completed in June, and it was several months later before that was made available to members. As someone that trains coaches on ethics, it had me staying up all night because the next day I had a class on ethics, and now we had a new version of the Code of Ethics. And so it meant getting all the research and updating materials, etc. So I am wondering, perhaps the revised code was made available to ACTO members ahead of time. I don't know. I wasn't a member at that time. Or is there something we can say to the ICF, hey, if you're going to put this out there, give trainers a heads up so that we can be ready and teach the new Code of Ethics when it's in force?
These are the types of conversations that as ACTO we are actively engaged in with the ICF. You know, topics like the PCC markers, we are trying to be advocates for coach trainers to partner. We're asking the ICF to partner with us and that we can partner with them to get the word out and make sure that our students know and that we know and are prepared for that. So these are the kinds of conversations we're in all of the time. And we didn't hear anything at ACTO prior to anybody else about the Code of Ethics changes. The PCC marker stuff, we're sort of in the same boat as everyone else, but we are doing things to make sure that we get the training out there for everybody as quickly as we can. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. I actually heard about ACTO after that change. I didn't even know it existed. I happened to be at an ICF conference and mentioned it to people from the ICF. Hey, we weren't told about this and we're supposed to teach the new code. So I asked for it then. I hope that conversation continues.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we did work for a long time on the code, It took us probably longer than we had expected because when you start reading these documents and everything and the implication it has and the clarity it requires, and it takes longer. I mean, I was impressed because of the minuteness of the people involved, analyzing, sometimes spending quite a lot of time on just maybe some one word, what it will convey, if it gets translated, how will people really interpret it? I mean, it requires a lot more than just a quick review. So I value what you're saying, but it took quite a long time to do the revision and then for it to be approved. And I suppose everything, it was communicated at the same time to everybody because that's when it was ready.
Myrna, I just want to say thank you for this. It's been incredibly helpful from my standpoint, and I did wonder about whether we will be able to access the slides, and I've understood that we receive one CEU for this as well.
We're actually recording this call as well, so you can, if Myrna wishes to give us the slide deck, we'll post that on the website along with the recording, but the recording will be available.
Thank you.
Okay, and just to finalize because of the timing, these are some ideas as to you can see as to why it's important to behave ethically, some of the benefits. Okay, so this is just my closing, which has to do, remember, this has broader implications than we think of, and this is my invitation. Let's promote to be ethical in order to influence and make positive changes in the coaching profession, in society, and the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great, great presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just want to do a quick plug for ACTO to let everybody know about our conference. Is coming up June 15th to 17th in Phoenix. We have our slate of speakers ready to go. Our keynotes are Linda Miller and Jennifer Conweiler. All the information about the website is conference is on our website at actoonline.org. Would love to see you all there. And our next forum call is on March 16th. It will be Dr. Paul Scheel, neuroscience, facilitating transformative learning. So would love to see you all there as well. And thank you so much, Myrna, for being here and taking us through the roadmap of what sometimes can be an overwhelming issue. So thank you so much for stepping us through it.
No, my pleasure. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for being on this call.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.